1. The Fall of the Berlin Wall, 1989. A cold November evening in 1989. A wall that had divided families, friends, and an entire nation for 28 years was about to crumble. Not just any wall, the Berlin Wall, a 96-mile concrete barrier that had become the most powerful symbol of the Cold War. For nearly 3 decades, this wall had split Berlin in two. East Germans lived under strict communist rule, while their Western counterparts enjoyed democracy and prosperity. Families were separated, dreams were crushed, and many lost their lives trying to cross from east to west. But on November 9th, something extraordinary happened. After weeks of peaceful protests and mounting pressure, East German officials made a surprising announcement. The borders would open. As word spread, thousands of East Berliners rushed to the wall. They came with hammers, chisels, and hope in their hearts. What followed was remarkable. People from both sides of the wall began chipping away at the concrete, embracing strangers who had been neighbors all along. This wasn't just about breaking down a physical barrier. It was the beginning of the end of communist rule in Eastern Europe, leading to Germany's reunification and changing the course of history forever. Sometimes the biggest changes start with a single crack in a wall. The moon landing, 1969. Picture this, July 20th, 1969. The world holds its breath as 3 brave astronauts hurtle through space, embarking on humanity's most ambitious journey yet. After traveling 238,900 miles, the Apollo 11 spacecraft approaches its historic destination, the moon. Inside the lunar module Eagle, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin prepare for something no human has ever done before. As they descend towards the lunar surface, hearts race not just in the spacecraft but in millions of homes across Earth where people gather around their televisions. Then those immortal words crackle through the radio. The Eagle has landed. Hours later, Armstrong steps down the ladder and utters that famous phrase, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." This wasn't just an American achievement, it was a triumph for all humanity. After centuries of gazing up at that glowing orb in the night sky, we had finally touched it. The moon landing proved that with enough determination, ingenuity, and courage, we could accomplish what once seemed impossible. It sparked a new era of scientific discovery and showed us that the sky is not the limit. It's just the beginning. 3. The Black Death, 1347 to 1351. Imagine a world where 1 in 3 people simply vanished. This wasn't a supernatural event or a work of fiction. This was the horrifying reality of the Black Death, the deadliest pandemic in human history. In 1347, death arrived on merchant ships at European ports. The sailors, many already dead or dying, carried more than just cargo. They brought with them infected rats and fleas that would change the course of human history. The symptoms were terrifying. First came the fever, then the painful swelling of lymph nodes into what they called buboes. Within days, victims would be coughing up blood, their skin turning black with decay, hence the name Black Death. The plague spread like wildfire across Europe and Asia. Cities became ghost towns. Bodies piled up in the streets. Between 75 and 200 million people perished in just 4 years. A scale of death so massive it's hard to comprehend even today. This catastrophe reshaped medieval society completely. With so many dead, the surviving workers gained more power. Feudalism began to crumble, and the way people thought about life, death, and religion would never be the same. The Black Death reminds us just how vulnerable humanity can be, and why we must never take our modern medical advances for granted. Or the American Declaration of Independence, 1776. A hot summer day in Philadelphia, 1776. The air is thick with tension as 56 brave men gather to make a decision that would change the course of history forever. For years, the American colonies had endured British rule, unfair taxation, limited representation, and growing restrictions on their freedoms. But on July 4th, something extraordinary happened. Thomas Jefferson, along with the Continental Congress, put pen to paper and drafted what would become one of the most influential documents in human history, the Declaration of Independence. Those powerful words, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal," would echo through centuries. Imagine the courage it took for these 13 colonies to stand up against the mighty British Empire. Each signature on that document wasn't just ink on parchment. It was essentially signing their own death warrant if the revolution failed. But they believed in something greater than themselves, the dream of freedom and self-governance. This wasn't just about breaking away from Britain. It was about creating something new, a nation founded on principles of liberty, democracy, and the pursuit of happiness. A bold experiment that would become the United States of America. And now, nearly 250 years later, that single day in Philadelphia still represents one of humanity's most powerful statements of freedom and human rights. 5. World War II begins, 1939, September 1st, 1939. A date that would forever change the course of human history. Dawn breaks over Poland as the rumbling of German tanks shatters the morning silence. Hitler's Nazi war machine crosses the border, unleashing what would become the deadliest conflict humanity has ever known. Picture this, a world still healing from the wounds of the First World War, now plunged into darkness once again. The German Blitzkrieg, or Lightning War, overwhelmed Polish defenses with shocking speed and brutality. 2 days later, Britain and France, honoring their alliance with Poland, declared war on Germany. The world held its breath as the dominoes began to fall. What started as a European conflict would soon engulf nearly every corner of the globe. From the frozen steppes of Russia to the scorching Pacific Islands, from the deserts of North Africa to the streets of London during the Blitz, no place would remain untouched. The numbers are almost impossible to comprehend. Over 70 million lives lost, entire cities reduced to rubble, and countless families torn apart. This wasn't just a war between armies. It was a total war that would redefine humanity's understanding of conflict, suffering, and sacrifice. World War II wasn't just another chapter in our history books. It was the moment that reshaped our modern world, leaving scars that we still feel today, and lessons we must never forget. 6. The invention of the printing press, 1440. Picture this, it's 1440, and in a small workshop in Mainz, Germany, a goldsmith named Johannes Gutenberg is about to change the world forever. Before his time, books were painstakingly copied by hand, taking months to produce a single copy. Knowledge was a luxury only the wealthy could afford. But Gutenberg had a revolutionary idea. Combining his metalworking skills with a wine press design, he created something extraordinary, movable metal type that could be arranged and rearranged to print entire pages. This wasn't just any invention. It was the key that would unlock human knowledge for the masses. Think about it. Suddenly, books that once took years to reproduce could be printed by the hundreds. The Bible, which previously cost as much as a house, became affordable to ordinary people. Ideas spread like wildfire across Europe, igniting the Renaissance, empowering the Protestant Reformation, and laying the groundwork for the scientific revolution. In fact, within just 50 years of Gutenberg's invention, there were over 20 million printed books in Europe. This wasn't just technological progress, it was a revolution in human consciousness, forever changing how we share, learn, and think. The printing press didn't just print books, it printed possibility.
Enjoying the video, correct? Make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell. Please leave your feedback, hit like, share the content.
7. The fall of the Roman Empire, 476 AD. Imagine standing in Rome, 476 AD. The once mighty empire that stretched from Britain to Egypt is about to witness its final moment. The streets that were once filled with the proud march of legionnaires now echo with uncertainty. For centuries, Rome had seemed invincible. But like a mighty oak with rotting roots, the empire had been slowly weakening from within. Political corruption, economic crisis, and constant invasions from Germanic tribes had taken their toll. On September 4th, 476 AD, something unthinkable happened. A Germanic warrior named Odoacer deposed the last Roman emperor, young Romulus Augustulus. The crown that had symbolized power for over 500 years was sent to Constantinople, never to return. This wasn't just the fall of an empire, it was the end of an era. As Rome's influence faded, Europe entered what we now call the Middle Ages. The sophisticated Roman systems of law, engineering, and culture gave way to a new world order. Think about it. An empire that took centuries to build crumbled in what seemed like an instant. It's a reminder that even the mightiest civilizations can fall when they forget the principles that made them great in the first place. The abolition of slavery in the U.S., 1865. On December 6, 1865, America finally confronted its darkest chapter. With three simple yet powerful lines, the 13th Amendment changed everything. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist within the United States. But the path to this moment was anything but simple. For nearly 250 years, millions of African Americans endured unimaginable cruelty. They were torn from their families, forced to work under the burning sun, and treated as property rather than human beings. It took a bloody civil war, costing over 600,000 American lives, to bring this system to an end. Think about that. More Americans died in the Civil War than in both world wars combined, all because some refused to accept that every person deserves to be free. When those final words were ratified, it wasn't just a legal document being signed. It was the culmination of countless sacrifices. From the Underground Railroad conductors who risked everything, to the soldiers who gave their lives, to the enslaved people who never stopped fighting for their freedom. But here's the thing. While the 13th Amendment abolished slavery, the fight for true equality was far from over. In many ways, that struggle continues today. It reminds us that sometimes the most important changes in history aren't endpoints, but beginnings. On the first flight by the Wright brothers, 1903, picture this. A cold December morning in 1903, on the windswept dunes of Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, two brothers, Orville and Wilbur Wright, are about to change the course of human history. They weren't wealthy inventors or prestigious scientists, just two bicycle mechanics from Dayton, Ohio, who dared to dream of the impossible, human flight. After years of research, countless failures, and unwavering determination, they built something extraordinary, the Wright Flyer. That historic morning, Orville took the controls while Wilbur watched from the ground. The engine sputtered to life, the propellers whirred, and suddenly the impossible happened. For 12 magical seconds, their creation soared through the air, covering 120 feet. It wasn't just a hop or a glide. This was the world's first powered, controlled, sustained flight. They flew 3 more times that day, with their final attempt lasting 59 seconds and covering 852 feet. Think about it. In just one morning, these two brothers from Ohio opened the door to a future where we can cross oceans in hours and even touch the stars, all because they dared to believe that humans were meant to fly. 10. The signing of the Magna Carta, 1215. Picture this, England. 1215. A tyrant king stands surrounded by angry nobles on the fields of Runnymede. This isn't just any ordinary medieval showdown. This is the moment that would change the course of human rights and democracy forever. King John had been a disaster for England. He taxed heavily, imprisoned opponents without trial, and basically did whatever he wanted. The powerful barons had finally had enough of his royal temper tantrums. So they did something unprecedented. They gathered their forces and confronted the king, forcing him to sign a revolutionary document, the Magna Carta, or Great Charter. Now, this wasn't just some medieval complaint letter. This was the first time in history that a monarch's power was formally limited by law. The Magna Carta established groundbreaking principles. No one, not even the king, was above the law. It protected against illegal imprisonment, introduced the right to a fair trial, and limited the crown's ability to levy taxes without approval. Think about it. These ideas written on parchment 800 years ago still echo in modern constitutions and bills of rights around the world. From American democracy to human rights declarations, they all trace their DNA back to that dramatic day when a group of nobles stood up to a king and changed history forever.